Disclaimer: this episode may include graphic descriptions of crime and criminal activity. It therefore may not be suitable for listeners who are under the age of 18 or people who may find the descriptions as disturbing. Listeners' discretion is advised from this point forward. Hello and welcome to this episode of Crime KE Podcast. My good name is Ajuma. I am a journalist from Kenya and your host for this true crime podcast. Now, this is the fourth story of season 2, and I am so happy that you found time to listen in today. We are going to be unpacking the story of another one of Kenya's most wanted criminals in history, as is the theme for season 2. Now, Simon Matheri Ikere, famously known as Matheri, was one of Kenya's most known criminals in the early 2000s. He had a very long crime run that ended in him getting gunned down by police in Athi River in 2007. Now, without further ado, let us get into today's episode. Also, please stick around until the end of this episode to find out how you can support this podcast. Simon Matheri Ikere was born on 30th December of 1977 in Gashie, Kiambu County. He went to Kihara Primary School where he dropped out in class 6. Now, his schoolmates described Matheri as a smart, humble, calm, and very obedient student. However, outside school, Matheri was known to be a bully, and his father even admitted that Matheri had a very short temper. I watched an interview where his father talked about how much his behavior affected his family. He narrated a specific instance where he got into a disagreement with Matheri, and Matheri ended up burning down his house and running away from home. His father reported this incident to the police, and he was arrested and charged with arson. He was then sentenced to serve 5 years at Kamiti Maximum Security Prison, but he was released after serving only 2 years. His father said that he believed that it was at this time when he was in prison that he changed. And during that time in prison, Matheri also acquired an AK-47 rifle which he got from a Somali refugee. He would later use this rifle to threaten his brother after he suspected that he had reported him to the police. After Matheri dropped out of school, his father took him to his cousin's garage to try and help him find a job to keep him busy. Matheri's cousin started training him in welding and soon after employed him as a mechanic at the shop. And this was actually Matheri's first job. It was during this time when he was working as a mechanic in 1999 that he met a woman named Josephine Wamboi. Wamboi said that she met Matheri when he was working as a mechanic and she was working as a house girl. At the time, Matheri was 30 years old and Wamboi was half his age at 15. Now, according to Wamboi, she was drawn to him by his polite and charming personality. And apart from Matheri being polite and charming, he had also promised that he would marry her. Now, within the first year of their relationship, they already had a child together. And Wamboi said that immediately after she gave birth to their daughter, Matheri withdrew his marriage proposal, so they separated. They would later reconnect in late 2001 after Matheri apologized and they decided to even move in together. Now, Wamboi said that she felt that Matheri really loved her and would honor his promise this time around because he even introduced her to his parents. Now, in 2002, Wamboi gave birth to two twins, but there's nothing like that. Wamboi gave birth to twins and she said that they were very happy. They had 3 kids now. Matheri was a responsible husband and he took care of her and their children. Wamboi said that she noticed a change in her husband in 2005. She said that as soon as she noticed the change. She noticed that he started coming home late, and he even quit his job as a mechanic. He started working as a construction worker and sometimes even as a tout. When Wambui questioned why he was coming late, Matheri told her that she had no reason to worry as long as he was providing for her and the children. Now, this was the time that Matheri got into a life of crime. He would break into people's houses and even businesses and steal from them. His criminal activities happened in his home area of Gashia and its surrounding towns of Kikuyu, Kihara, and Kinoo. Now, he moved to Nairobi because in Gashia people were already aware of his crimes and they were starting to target his family because they were aware that he was in crime. Now they were starting to target his family, his children, and even his father and his wife were very worried at this point. Wambui said that the community was becoming hostile towards her and her children. At some point, the locals burnt down their house because of what Matheri was doing. Now, while in Nairobi, Matheri went on full criminal. He started targeting businesses and stealing from them. And he was not only involved in stealing, he would also be accused of rape and murder. And some of these murders were actually contracted killings. That means that he was hired as a hitman. He had clients who would hire him to kill people on their behalf. I found out that most of his clients were businessmen. He would be paid up to 500,000 Kenyan shillings for a single murder. And sometimes, for some reason, he would go back and kill the client after he was paid. He became the most wanted criminal in Kenya and managed to stay out of police radar. Matheri was described as a psychopath who often shot his victims in the mouth. Now, according to police statements, Matheri managed to escape the police for a long time because he worked with some police officers who would tip him off. They would tell him about the police activities and even give him information on what the police had on him. So he managed to stay ahead of the police. But apart from having police who are giving him information, Matheri was just a clever criminal. He was clever enough to have stayed off the police radar for a long time. Now let us go back to Wambui. When their house in Gashia was burnt down by the locals, Matheri moved her and their children to Kimende, which is a small town located along the Nairobi and Naivasha highway. Wambui said that she had no idea that Matheri was a criminal until sometime in 2006 when police would come to their house to look for Matheri. Now, at this time, Matheri also started coming home with his gun, and now she absolutely knew there was no reason for her to doubt that her husband was absolutely a criminal. She said that from that point, she felt very unsafe having Matheri in the house because police would often drop by for impromptu searches, and by this time, his photos were all over the newspapers. Matheri had also been involved in the killings of some of their neighbors, and him being at home meant that they could decide to retaliate through his family. Wambui said that she had asked him to surrender several times, but he refused. She said that Matheri always told her that he would rather live a short, rich life than stay alive for long and live in poverty. In December of 2006, Matheri was accused of killing 2 people and injuring 2 others when he, alongside other men, attacked a petrol station in Nairobi. In January 2007, Matheri was involved in the murder of a United States missionary identified as Lois Anderson and her daughter identified as Zelda White. Matheri and fellow gang members tried to rob them as they were waiting to be picked up in Kinoo by a family friend that they were visiting, and they ended up getting murdered during the robbery process. Now, by February 2007, there was a bounty of up to 150,000 Kenyan shillings on his head, and this would go to anyone who would provide information to the police that would lead to his capture, dead or alive. Like, that was how badly he was wanted. They didn't care whether he was dead or alive, as long as he was found. Now, at this time, there were increased cases of rape, murders, and robberies associated with Matheri and his gang. And on 12th of February of 2007, Hussein Ali, who was the police commissioner at the time, declared Simon Matheri as the public enemy number 1. Soon after that, a special team of police officers was formed, and their only mandate was to hunt down Matheri and his accomplices. This special team of police officers was drawn from 3 different police units. Some were from the Flying Squad, others were from the Special Crimes and Prevention Unit. If you remember, I spoke about the Special Crimes and Prevention Unit from the previous episode on Shimoli, and others were drawn from a police unit called the November Squad. The officers divided themselves into 2 groups in order to catch Matheri and his accomplices. One group tracked him through his mobile phone, and the second group set up dragnet in his known hideouts across Nairobi. Now, on the evening of February 19th of 2007, the police tracked Matheri to an area near Thika town. After he made a phone call, they would see his location, the location of his phone. Now, before they could figure out a plan to capture him, they lost his location. The next time his location was picked up, he was already in Mombasa on the same evening. Now, police were aware that he had a hideout in Athi River, so they put up roadblocks near City Cabanas restaurant on Mombasa Road, knowing that he would pass by there on his way to Athi River. Now, the thing is, Matheri did not use the route when he was heading to Athi River. Remember, it was suspected that he was working with some officers, so he might as well have been tipped off that the police were waiting for him at a certain place. He instead used the North Airport Road to get to Athi River, and the police ended up losing his location again. Now, later that night, police received a tip-off that he had been spotted in Athi River. At this time, the police organized themselves because they wanted this to be the day that they catch Matheri for the last time. And after organizing themselves, they headed for his hideout in Athi River. By midnight of February 20th, more than 100 police officers surrounded Matheri's house in Athi River. More than 100. Once the police knew they had him cornered, they ordered him to surrender. Now, I want you to listen very carefully. According to the police, Matheri came from the house together with a man who was identified as his bodyguard, Elias Gadumbi Osama, who most of the time he was referred to as M. Now, according to the police, now this is the police side of the story. Police say that Matheri came out of the house with an AK-47 rifle and started engaging the police in a gunfight. And both Matheri and M ended up getting shot dead in the process. Now, there's a whole different side to this story of how Matheri ended up getting dead. Let us get into that. You see, in the house, he was living with a woman who has been identified as Felista Wanjiru. Felista Wanjiru said that she met Matheri in 2005 in Ongata Rongai, where she was working at a school. Wanjiru said that when they met, Matheri told her that he was a taxi driver. They fell in love and moved in together, and they had been living together for about a year. Now, in the year that they lived together, Wanjiru said that they had moved houses a lot, and she had no idea that it was because Matheri was trying to run away from the police. Because when she always questioned him on why they were moving, he would always say that he would always say that he was running away from someone from his village who wanted him dead because of a land dispute. Wanjiru said that she had no idea that Matheri was a criminal until she saw his photos all over the news, on the newspapers and on TV, because unlike his other wife Wamboi, Wanjiru said that she never saw Matheri with a gun. She said that she didn't even know his full name. She just knew him as Matheri because he would even shower with his wallet and she never got a chance to look at his ID card or any of his identifying documents, which would always be in his wallet, which is strange to me, but okay. She said that when she saw him on the news, she ran away from home, and Matheri actually called her brother and told him to tell her that if she doesn't come back, he will personally find her and kill her. So she had no choice but to return to Matheri. And she said that since they moved into this specific house in Athi River, Matheri had never used the front door. He would always go out and come in through the back door. Except this specific day that the police came to look for him. Now, according to Wanjiru, when police surrounded their house that night, they were in the house together with M. They had the police ordering Matheri to surrender, and she said that he was hesitant at first. He told her that he knew that if he went out there, the police did not actually intend to arrest him, but they intended to kill him. So he was very hesitant to surrender at first. She said that he even tried to hide under the bed. He tried to escape through the back door, but he quickly realized that there was no way he could outrun the more than 100 police officers who were waiting for him outside. Wanjiru was 7 months pregnant at the time, so she was worried for her and the child, because when Matheri hesitated to come out, the police who were outside started threatening to burn the house down. She said that she tried to plead with him to surrender, and he actually decided to surrender. Now, Wanjiru's story differs from the police story from this point. Wanjiru says that Matheri and M surrendered. They left the house knowing that they were going to be arrested and she would probably see him in prison. But the police say that Matheri and M came out with guns and started engaging the police, so they had to shoot him. Videos from the media showed that Matheri was lying on his side with his hands behind his back, and experts say that it appeared like he had been shot at close range while handcuffed. In a specific episode of Jitopevu, it was uncovered that Matheri had surrendered and he was arrested and questioned for about 30 minutes. Then the police were ordered to kill him. They basically said it went something like this. The police boss was on the phone and he's being told that they finally arrested Matheri. This boss orders the officers on the ground to kill him, and they shoot him on the back of the head as he listens over the call. And once he confirms that Matheri had been murdered, he basically says congratulations and ends the call. There are basically like around 3 to 4 accounts of what happened, but the only people who know what happened are the people who were there. Police recovered a firearm and 26 rounds of ammunition from Matheri's house in Athi River, and Wanjiru was also arrested. News of Matheri's death was relieving for their family and the larger community, because nobody really ever felt safe with him around. His father said that his death was a painful relief for the family. Painful because no matter how evil he is, he was still his son and a member of the family. And it was a relief because they all felt unsafe having him around. They didn't know if someone would come and burn their house down one day because of what Matheri was doing. Reports say that they were happy to learn Reports say that people were happy to learn of the news of his death because of really what he had put people through. And people would actually go to the mortuary to confirm that it was him and he was really dead. The family came to identify his dead body at City Mortuary, and they were also just finding out that Matheri had another wife and she was pregnant. The family say that Matheri had never introduced Wanjiru to them, but they only knew of Wamboi and her children, because there was even a point where they lived in Gashie with Matheri's family. Now, remember, Wanjiru had been arrested. She was charged with aiding Matheri's criminal activity, and she appeared at Kibera Law Courts just 7 days after Matheri was killed. On the 27th of March of 2007, she was sentenced to 2 years probation for being an accessory to Matheri's crimes. and she gave birth on the same day that Matheri was buried. Now, Matheri's burial was delayed because the villagers did not want him to be buried in the village. It took a very long time for them to agree that he get buried in his hometown, but he was eventually buried in Gashia. Wambui on her side said that after Matheri's death, she moved back to Gashia from Kimende, but she had a very hard time getting into the community. She said that the people were always suspicious of her because they thought that Matheri left her with a lot of money. She said that Matheri's family did not treat him well either, and they actually took everything from her, including her children. In an interview with Nation in 2009, she said that she really struggled after Matheri's death, and it was actually her church that came to her rescue. In 2010, Wambui was reported to have died by suicide after she threw herself into a well. One of Matheri's accomplices, who was identified as Osama Kadogo, hung himself after he heard that Matheri, who was basically his boss, had been shot dead. Other accomplices of Matheri would later be found beaten to death, then burnt. Thank you for listening to this episode until the end. That is all I have for you on the story of Simon Matheri Ikere. You can support this podcast by sharing it with your friends so that we can reach a larger community of listeners. If you enjoyed this episode, share it on your social media and tag us at crime.ke on Instagram. I love interacting with you on social media, so if you've listened to it and you love it, you can always share and tag me or the podcast. You can reach me on my social media through Ajuma. I am at Ajuma on Instagram, X, and TikTok, and I am at Ajuma Millicent on Facebook and LinkedIn. I have provided my social media handles in the show notes of this episode for you to get them easily. Now, follow the podcast on Instagram at crime.ke and interact with our posts. I also share updates on the cases I talked about in season 1 on the podcast Instagram page. So if you're not following us, then you're probably missing out on some update of cases of season 1. If there's a specific story that you want to listen to in this season of the podcast, then you can always DM me or the podcast. This season is actually going to be very short, so the sooner you submit your story, the earlier I get to work on it. I don't know if that makes sense. If you want to share any feedback, you can send in voice messages through the email that is in the show notes. So maybe I can play some of your messages after the episodes if that is something you like. But submit the voice notes first. Rate the podcast on the platform that you're listening in from, and don't forget to catch the next episode of Crime KE podcast on Thursday next week. Same time, same place. But until then, stay safe and remember, it's crime with a K.